A hushed Senate chamber erupts as Pam Bondi unveils shocking documents alleging Justice Amy Coney Barrett's secret deal, sparking a fiery clash that threatens to unravel the Supreme Court's integrity. The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, room buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the weight of what was to come. Senators shuffled papers, their aides whispering urgently as the gallery filled with reporters, their cameras poised to capture every moment. At the center of it all sat former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, her steely gaze fixed on the table before her, a stack of documents clutched tightly in her hands. Across the room, Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett sat composed, her expression unreadable, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. The hearing, meant to address routine judicial oversight, had taken a dramatic turn when Bondi requested the floor, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "Mr. Chairman," Bondi began, her tone sharp and deliberate, "I have evidence that demands this committee's immediate attention, evidence that calls into question the integrity of one of our nation's highest judicial officers." The room fell silent, every eye on her. She held up a folder, its contents obscured but radiating significance. These documents suggest that Justice Amy Coney Barrett, during her confirmation process, made covert commitments regarding how she would rule on specific cases. Commitments that undermine the impartiality of the Supreme Court. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Senators leaned forward, their faces a mix of shock and skepticism. Barrett's legal team, seated behind her, exchanged hurried glances, their calm demeanor cracking. Bondi's words were a grenade, and the pin had been pulled. She opened the folder, revealing a series of emails and memos, their origins unclear, but their implications explosive. "These communications," she continued, "indicate that certain parties, influential figures with vested interests, were assured by then-nominee Barrett that she would align with their priorities on key issues, including cases involving corporate regulation and individual rights." Barrett's composure held, but her fingers tightened around the arms of her chair. She leaned forward, her voice steady but firm. "Madame Chair, I must object. These allegations are baseless and inflammatory. I have never made any such commitments, and I demand to see the evidence Ms. Bondi claims to possess." Her words were measured, but the tension in her posture was unmistakable. The room hung on her response, the stakes impossibly high. Bondi's accusations, if true, could shake the foundations of public trust in the judiciary. If false, they risked destroying her own credibility. Bondi didn't flinch. She slid the documents across the table toward the committee chair, her eyes never leaving Barrett. "The evidence speaks for itself," she said coolly. "Emails between aides, memos outlining discussions, and notes from private meetings during the confirmation process. They paint a clear picture of promises made in exchange for support." The chair, a seasoned senator known for his impartiality, accepted the documents with a grim expression, promising a thorough review. But the damage was done. The room buzzed with whispers, reporters scribbling furiously as the allegations spread like wildfire. Barrett's legal team sprang into action, one of her attorneys rising to address the committee. "This is a blatant attempt to smear justice, Barrett's reputation," he declared, his voice ringing with indignation. "We question the authenticity of these documents and demand an immediate investigation into their origins." The attorney's words were a counterpunch, but Bondi's calm demeanor suggested she was prepared for the fight. She leaned back in her chair, a faint smile playing on her lips, as if she held more cards than anyone realized. The hearing devolved into controlled chaos. Senators peppered Bondi with questions, some probing the details of her evidence, others accusing her of grandstanding. Barrett, meanwhile, maintained her dignity, her responses concise but forceful. "I have served this country with integrity," she said at one point, her voice rising slightly. "These accusations are a distortion of my record and my oath." Yet the documents loomed large, their contents still a mystery to most in the room. Were they genuine? And if so, who had provided them to Bondi? As the session adjourned for a brief recess, the tension remained palpable. Reporters swarmed Bondi, who offered only cryptic responses, promising more revelations to come. Barrett, flanked by her team, exited the room with her head held high, but the weight of the allegations was clear. The hearing was far from over, and the nation was watching, waiting to see who would emerge unscathed. Bondi's evidence had ignited a firestorm, but its true impact depended on what lay within those pages, and whether they could withstand scrutiny. The recess ended, and the Senate Judiciary Committee room crackled with renewed intensity. Reporters, still buzzing from Pam Bondi's cryptic promises, scrambled back to their seats, their cameras trained on the returning figures. Pam Bondi strode in, her expression resolute, a fresh stack of papers in hand, signaling she wasn't done landing blows. Justice Amy Coney Barrett followed, her face a mask of calm, though the tightness in her jaw hinted at the storm brewing within. Her legal team, now visibly agitated, huddled close, their whispers urgent. The nation watched, breathless, as the hearing resumed, the weight of Bondi's allegations hanging like a guillotine. The committee chair, his voice gravelly from hours of tension, called the room to order. "Ms. Bondi," he said, "you've made serious claims. We've reviewed your initial documents, and while they raise questions, they lack context. You've promised more evidence. Now's the time to deliver." His words were a challenge, and Bondi met it head-on. She rose, her movements deliberate, and placed a new set of documents on the table. "These," she declared, "are communications from a key advisor to Justice Barrett during her confirmation. They explicitly reference discussions about case outcomes tied to assurances given to secure her nomination." The room erupted in murmurs. Senators craned their necks to glimpse the papers, while Barrett's team shot up, one attorney slamming a hand on the table. "This is outrageous," he barked. "These are unauthenticated scraps, cherry-picked to mislead. We demand a forensic analysis." Barrett, however, remained still, her eyes locked on Bondi. For a moment the two women seemed to exist in a vacuum, the rest of the room fading as their silent confrontation spoke volumes. Then Barrett spoke, her voice low but piercing. "Ms. Bondi, you're weaving a narrative from half-truths. I've never engaged in such discussions, and these documents, if real, are being grossly misrepresented." Bondi didn't blink. "The truth doesn't hide, Justice Barrett," she countered. "These emails name names, dates, and cases. They show a pattern of promises made to powerful players who wanted a reliable vote on the bench." She turned to the committee, her voice rising. "This isn't about one judge. It's about a system that allows backroom deals to shape our highest court." Her words struck a nerve, igniting a flurry of questions from senators. Some pressed Bondi for specifics, others grilled Barrett, whose responses remained measured, but increasingly pointed. "I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution," Barrett said, her tone icy. "I've honored that oath. These accusations are an attack not just on me, but on the judiciary's independence." The hearing took a sharper turn when a senior senator, known for his prosecutorial style, leaned into Bondi. "You're making explosive claims, Ms. Bondi, but your evidence is circumstantial at best. Where are the originals? Who's your source?" Bondi's smile was razor-thin. "My source is credible, Senator, and the originals are preserved. I'm prepared to submit them for independent verification, but let's not distract from what's in front of us." Her deflection was deft, but it fueled skepticism. Barrett's team seized the moment, producing their own documents, metadata analyses suggesting Bondi's emails might be altered. "This is a fabrication," one attorney declared, holding up a report. "Timestamps don't align, and signatures are inconsistent." The room teetered on the edge of chaos. Senators argued over procedure while the gallery buzzed with speculation. Bondi, undeterred, doubled down, revealing a handwritten note allegedly from Barrett's advisor, outlining a gentleman's agreement on a landmark case. The note's appearance was a bombshell, its scrawled words projected on screens for all to see. Barrett's face remained impassive, but her attorney's voice shook with fury. "This is a stunt. That note could be anyone's." Yet the damage was done. Doubt crept into even the most neutral observers. As the session neared its close, the chair announced a pause for expert analysis of the new evidence. Bondi gathered her papers, her expression unreadable, while Barrett conferred with her team, their faces grim. The hearing had become a battleground, and the question loomed. Could Bondi's documents hold up, or was Barrett's defense gaining ground? The answer lay in the shadows, waiting to tip the scales. The Senate Judiciary Committee reconvened under a cloud of unease, the chamber's atmosphere electric with unresolved tension. The pause for expert analysis had only sharpened the stakes, and every seat was filled, the gallery a sea of anxious faces. Pam Bondi sat poised, her documents neatly arranged, her demeanor betraying nothing of the pressure bearing down. Across the room, Justice Amy Coney Barrett exuded quiet resolve, though her legal team's restless movements hinted at the strain of the fight. The chair's gavel fell, silencing the murmurs, and the battle resumed. The question of Bondi's evidence teetering on a knife's edge. The chair, his voice taut, addressed the room. "We've received preliminary findings from the forensic team. While not conclusive, they raise serious questions about the authenticity of Ms. Bondi's documents. Ms. Bondi, you'll need to substantiate your claims further." The words landed like a thunderclap. Bondi's eyes narrowed, but she rose without hesitation, her voice steady. "Mr. Chairman, I anticipated skepticism. I'm prepared to present additional evidence, a recorded conversation that corroborates the documents and exposes the depth of the commitments made." The room exploded in gasps and whispers. A recording? Senators exchanged stunned glances, while Barrett's team erupted in protest. "This is ambush tactics," one attorney shouted, his face flushed. "We've had no time to review this so-called evidence." Barrett, however, remained still, her gaze fixed on Bondi, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. The chair, visibly rattled, called for order, demanding Bondi produce the recording. With a nod, she signaled an aide, who connected a device to the chamber's audio system. The room fell silent as a grainy voice crackled through the speakers, an advisor, allegedly Barrett's, discussing assurances given to secure her confirmation. The recording was brief but damning, referencing specific cases and political players. "She knows what's expected," the voice said, chillingly matter-of-fact. The chamber reeled, reporters scribbling furiously as senators demanded clarity. Bondi seized the moment. "This isn't speculation," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This is proof of a coordinated effort to influence the Supreme Court. Justice Barrett was not a bystander. She was complicit." The accusation was a direct hit, and the room felt the impact. Barrett's response was immediate, her voice calm but laced with steel. "This is a fabrication, plain and simple. I've never authorized such discussions, and this recording is either manipulated or wholly invented. I welcome a full investigation to prove my innocence." Her words were a lifeline, but the recording's weight lingered, sowing doubt. Her legal team, scrambling, produced a sworn affidavit from the alleged advisor, denying the voice was his and claiming he'd been out of the country during the supposed conversation. The affidavit was a bold counter, but its timing felt desperate, fueling murmurs of a cover-up. The hearing spiraled into a clash of narratives. A senator, a longtime Barrett ally, grilled Bondi on the recording's chain of custody. "Where did this come from, Ms. Bondi? Why should we trust an anonymous source?" Bondi's response was measured but evasive. "The source is protected, but their credibility is unimpeachable. The recording speaks for itself." Her refusal to name names sparked outrage from Barrett's supporters, while others pressed for immediate FBI involvement. The chair, struggling to maintain control, announced the recording would be sent for voice analysis, but the damage was done. Public trust in the judiciary hung by a thread. As the session grew heated, a junior senator, known for her sharp intellect, shifted the focus. "This isn't just about documents or recordings," she said, her voice rising. "It's about whether our confirmation process allows hidden agendas to flourish. Ms. Bondi, Justice Barrett, both of you owe us transparency." The room stilled, her words cutting through the rancor. Bondi nodded, promising full cooperation, while Barrett reiterated her call for an investigation, her tone unwavering. Yet the senator's challenge lingered, exposing the broader stakes. The session closed with no resolution, the chair ordering expedited analysis of the recording. Bondi gathered her materials, her expression enigmatic, while Barrett's team huddled, their faces etched with worry. The hearing had become a crucible, and the truth remained elusive, buried in a web of accusations and denials. As the gavel fell, one question burned: whose narrative would prevail? The Senate Judiciary Committee chamber hummed with barely contained anticipation as the hearing resumed, the weight of the unresolved accusations pressing down on every soul present. The expedited analysis of Pam Bondi's bombshell recording had yielded results, and the nation awaited answers. Bondi sat at her table, her posture unyielding, her enigmatic calm a stark contrast to the storm she'd unleashed. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, flanked by her legal team, entered with measured steps, her face serene but her eyes burning with resolve. The chair's gavel struck, and the room braced for impact. The question of whose truth would hold swaying in the balance. The chair, his expression grim, opened with the forensic report. "The voice analysis is inconclusive," he announced, his words met with stifled gasps. "While the recording shows no clear signs of tampering, the speaker's identity cannot be confirmed. Ms. Bondi, this weakens your case." "Justice Barrett, it does not exonerate you." The statement was a spark in a powder keg. Bondi's lips twitched, a flicker of frustration breaking her composure, while Barrett's team exchanged terse nods, sensing an opening. The chair turned to Bondi. "You've had your moment. If you have more, now's the time." Bondi rose, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "The recording is one piece of a larger puzzle. I have testimony, sworn statements from 2 former aides who witnessed discussions about Justice Barrett's commitments." The room erupted, senators shouting over each other as Barrett's lead attorney leaped to his feet. "This is a circus," he roared. "Anonymous aides? Unverified claims? This committee deserves better." Barrett, however, raised a hand, silencing her team. Her voice cut through the din, calm but razor-sharp. "Ms. Bondi, you're piling innuendo on top of fabrication. I've never made such commitments, and no credible witness will say otherwise." The standoff was electric, the 2 women locked in a silent duel. Bondi produced affidavits, their contents sealed, but their implications seismic. "These aides," she said, "detail meetings where Barrett's team outlined her stance on pivotal cases to secure key votes. They're ready to testify under oath." The claim was a grenade, and the room felt the blast. Senators demanded access to the affidavits, while Barrett's team countered with a motion to dismiss the testimony as hearsay. The chair, visibly strained, ordered the documents, reviewed but allowed Bondi to proceed, a decision that drew furious objections. The hearing descended into a verbal brawl. A senator, a fierce Barrett defender, tore into Bondi. "You're weaponizing unproven allegations to smear a sitting justice. Where's the hard evidence?" Bondi's response was icy. "The evidence is in the pattern. Emails, notes, recordings, and now testimony. The truth is emerging, Senator, whether you like it or not." Her defiance galvanized her supporters but deepened the divide. Another senator, a moderate, pressed Barrett directly. "Justice, can you categorically deny any discussions about case outcomes during your confirmation?" Barrett's answer was unflinching. "I can and I do. My record speaks for itself, and I've served with impartiality." The tension spiked when Barrett's team unveiled their own evidence, a digital audit trail suggesting Bondi's documents had been manipulated. "Metadata inconsistencies altered timestamps," an attorney declared, projecting charts for all to see. "This is a coordinated attack, and we're tracing its origins." The accusation shifted the room's dynamic, casting doubt on Bondi's crusade. Reporters whispered furiously, sensing a turning tide. Bondi, however, was unfazed, producing a counter-report from her own experts, claiming the audit was flawed. The dueling analyses left the committee fractured, senators arguing over whose science to trust. As the session wound down, a surprise emerged. A whistleblower, a former Senate staffer, requested to testify anonymously, claiming knowledge of the confirmation process. The chair, after heated debate, agreed to a closed-door session, a move that infuriated Bondi's critics and intrigued her allies. Bondi gathered her papers, her expression unreadable, while Barrett's team huddled, their confidence shaken. The hearing had become a labyrinth of truth and deception, and the whistleblower's testimony loomed as a potential key, or another trap. As the gavel fell, the nation held its breath, waiting for the next revelation. The Senate Judiciary Committee, chamber, though closed to the public, pulsed with a tension that seeped beyond its walls. The whistleblower's anonymous testimony, shrouded in secrecy, had kept the nation on edge, with leaks and speculation flooding the airwaves. Now, as the committee reconvened publicly, the room was a pressure cooker. Pam Bondi sat with her trademark composure, her eyes sharp, betraying a flicker of anticipation. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, her demeanor resolute, entered with her legal team, their faces taut but determined. The chair's gavel fell, and the final act of this seismic confrontation began. The whistleblower's revelations poised to either shatter or vindicate. The chair, his voice heavy with the weight of the moment, addressed the room. "The whistleblower's testimony has been reviewed. It provides critical context, but it's not a silver bullet. We'll summarize its findings, then hear from both parties." The room stilled as he outlined the testimony. A former Senate staffer claimed to have overheard discussions during Barrett's confirmation, not involving her directly, but implicating aides who suggested her stances aligned with key senators' priorities. The testimony was vague, lacking names or specifics, and failed to tie Barrett to any explicit promises. Bondi's face tightened, sensing her case slipping, while Barrett's team leaned forward, sensing an opening. Bondi rose, her voice fierce but controlled. "This testimony confirms a culture of deal-making around Justice Barrett's nomination. Even if she wasn't in the room, her team signaled commitments, undermining judicial independence." Her words were a desperate lunge, but the room's mood had shifted. A senator, a neutral figure, challenged her sharply. "Ms. Bondi, you've presented documents, recordings, and now testimony, all inconclusive. Are you accusing aides or Justice Barrett herself?" Bondi's pause was brief but telling. "The pattern is clear," she insisted. "The justice benefited from these arrangements, knowingly or not." Barrett's response was a masterclass in restraint, her voice steady but laced with righteous indignation. "I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I made no commitments, and no one was authorized to speak for me. This testimony exonerates me, not indicts me." Her legal team pounced, presenting a bombshell of their own, a sworn statement from the whistleblower's supervisor, revealing the staffer had a history of fabricating claims for attention. The supervisor's affidavit, corroborated by colleagues, painted the whistleblower as unreliable, unraveling Bondi's final gambit. The room buzzed, reporters scribbling as the tide turned decisively. The hearing became a crucible of reckoning. Barrett's team produced forensic evidence, finalized during the closed session, showing Bondi's key documents, emails, notes, and the recording, bore signs of manipulation. Metadata mismatches and voice modulation traces suggested a coordinated effort to fabricate evidence. A senator, voice trembling with fury, confronted Bondi. "Have you misled this committee, Ms. Bondi? Who supplied these forgeries?" Bondi's composure cracked, her eyes darting briefly before she rallied. "I stand by my evidence," she said, but her voice lacked its earlier fire. "I acted in good faith, pursuing justice." The chair, sensing the endgame, called for a vote on whether to refer Bondi's claims to the Justice Department for investigation. The motion passed overwhelmingly, a stinging rebuke to her campaign. Barrett, seizing the moment, addressed the committee. "One final time. This ordeal has tested our judiciary, but it's also shown its resilience. I call for reforms to ensure transparency in confirmations, so no one faces such baseless attacks again." Her words, eloquent and defiant, drew nods even from skeptics, cementing her triumph. As the gavel fell, the room exhaled. Bondi gathered her papers, her face a mask of defiance, but the weight of defeat was clear. Barrett exited, her head high, her integrity intact. The fallout was swift. Media dissected Bondi's missteps, while Barrett's call for reform sparked bipartisan talks. The judiciary, though battered, emerged stronger, its independence reaffirmed. The nation, once divided, found common ground in demanding transparency, a legacy of a battle that had tested truth itself.